What if Japan joined the Allies? In our own timeline, Japan joined the Axis powers in the Second World War when they bombed Pearl Harbor and invaded British, Dutch, and American colonies in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. China, whom they were fighting ever since 1937, automatically found themselves on the side of the Allies. Prior to that, in the First World War, Japan joined the Entente and invaded German colonies in China and the Pacific. However, after the end of the Taisha period, their new militaristic government found itself at odds with the West as they had expansionist ideas in Southeast Asia at the expense of the European colonial powers to take its resources. When France fell in 1940, Japan took French Indochina, sparking sanctions by the United States, which ultimately pushed Japan to declare war on them. Meanwhile, the Weimar Republic entered into an alliance with the Kuomintang-led Republic of China in 1928 under Chiang Kai-shek, in which they supported them both financially and militarily. The Nazis, who took over Germany in 1933, decided to uphold that alliance. Germany would support them in their civil war against the communists, and initially supported them against Japan. Germany would, however, slowly start to favor Japan, with whom they signed the Anti-Comintern Pact in 1936 and Tripartite Pact in 1940. That process was fully completed in 1941 with the bombing of Pearl Harbor. But what if that didn't happen? What if Japan joined the Allies? Just like in our own timeline, Germany signs the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with the Soviet Union. But unlike in our own timeline, Japan is furious as they and Germany are in an anti-Comintern pact, and because they are, as of the signing of that treaty, involved in the battles of Kokkingal with the Soviet Union, that would end in September of that year with a Soviet-Mongolian victory. Japan would start to distance itself from Germany. Things got worse in 1940 when France fell. Japan hoped to get French Indochina, but instead it was given to the German collaboration government in Vichy. This was the last straw for Japan, and so on August 7, 1940, Japan bombs the Axis fleet stationed in Saigon. Germany and Vichy France would declare war on Japan, who joins the Allies. Thailand also joins the Allies, and together with the British they take down French Indochina. Thailand would manage to regain parts of Laos and Cambodia. The rest is under Japanese occupation. With the Allies halting support for China, and instead supporting Japan, the Republic of China collapses and falls to Japan by 1941. Remnants of the Republic would hold out in Qinghai and Sichuan, as the Tibetan plateau is, due to its high altitude, hard to conquer, and since they pose no threat to Japan, they are left alone. The rest of China becomes part of the pro-Japanese reorganized national government of the Republic of China under Wang Jinhui. Warlords in Yunnan, Guangxi, Sichuan, and Gansu that switched sides managed to retain control over their own domain. Mengjiang was extended to Sichuan and Ningxia. Xinjiang would formally declare itself sovereign, as the Republic of Xinjiang is not to fall to Japan, but they are just a Soviet puppet. Japan, Thailand, and Japanese vassals would start to deploy forces in the North African campaign, and the United Kingdom can deploy all of its Indian, Australian, and Kiwi forces as well. In this timeline, Operation Crusader would have seen a much greater defeat for the Axis powers, as they were pushed out of not just Cyrenaica, but all of Libya. On the 13th of May 1942, Tunisia would have been liberated, and the rest of French Africa switches sides. The Allies land that same year in Europe, but not in Italy but France, as the Dieppe raid is a success, and they managed to keep a beachhead in France. In 1943, the Commonwealth and Japan also land in Italy, and Mussolini is still ousted, prompting Hitler to invade Italy himself and put up a puppet regime under Mussolini. In our own timeline, the United Kingdom wanted Turkey to join the Allies, but fortunately for Turkey, the United States permitted them to stay neutral. In this timeline, not only is there no United States to balance the UK out, but Japan would also insist that Turkey joins the war. When the German Sixth Army was destroyed in Stalingrad, Turkey finally made the switch, and they declared war on the Axis. Shortly after, Commonwealth Japanese and Turkish force started to push the Axis back. Bulgaria already switched sides. Then Romania also switched sides. Romanian and Soviet forces would manage to encircle a large portion of Reichskommissariat Ukraine and Army Group South. The operation ends with Army Group South not existing anymore. The Allies managed to liberate Greece and Albania, and with help from the Chetniks, they also liberate Yugoslavia. The Allies managed to defeat Hungary and Slovakia and start to invade Germany from all three sides. Germany is forced to surrender on the 8th of May 1944 after the British managed to take Berlin and Hitler killed himself. In the aftermath of the Second World War, the Soviet Union got Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Cressy, including Bialystok and Transnistria back and took Petsamo, but failed to retake Bessarabia and didn't manage to establish any satellite states in Eastern Europe. The pre-war government in Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, and Poland was re-established. Romania got northern Transylvania back and Bulgaria kept southern Dobruja, and both kept their monarchy. Germany was fully under the occupation of the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom would split Germany into three. The Protestant North would become the Federal Republic of Germany and would be like Germany in our own timeline, but without the conservative and Catholic South and without the East being under communism. Its first chancellor would be Social Democrat Kurt Schumacher. Compared to our own timeline, the SPD wins more often while the CDU loses more often. The South, consisting of Baden-Württemberg, Bavaria, Austria and even Hungary, becomes the Danubian Federation under former Crown Prince Otto von Habsburg as Otto I. Lastly, the Rhineland would be under international occupation before eventually becoming its own sovereign state, namely the Rhenish Republic. The Soviet Union didn't really become a superpower as they didn't really gain anything and lost a huge fraction of their population. This humiliation might even spark an internal conflict. Nonetheless, the Soviet Union might still be feared and despised, and so European countries, especially those that neighbor the Soviet Union, namely Poland, Czechoslovakia, Romania and Turkey, would be eager to form a defensive pact to counteract any expansionist Soviet Union. Meanwhile, in East Asia, Japan consolidates power and would start to be hostile to the West again. A Cold War between London, Moscow and Tokyo emerges. In China, the United Kingdom would support KMT insurrectionists that are especially prevalent in the East that is further away from Japan and more sparsely populated, while the Soviet Union supports CCP insurrectionists that are especially prevalent in the big cities as they have a higher communist preference. In what used to be French Indochina, Japan establishes the Kingdom of Kampuchea, Kingdom of Luang Prabang, and Empire of Vietnam. Both Japan and the Soviet Union would support independence movements in British and French colonies, with Japan supporting nationalist ones, and the Soviet Union communist ones. Japan would also sponsor Turkic rebels in Xinjiang, Central Asia and Azerbaijan. The Soviet Union might at one point replace the government in Xinjiang, led by the Han Chinese Sheng Shikai, with a local Wire 1, for example under Aliyan Tor, and might change its name to better reflect its people from Xinjiang to East Turkestan. Mongolia and Mengjiang would be a topic of tensions as they are both Mongolian and see themselves as the true Mongolia. In 1945, Japanese Prime Minister Kuniaki Koizo meets with King Abdulaziz al-Saud, and both autocratic anti-communist and anti-liberal countries would work together, with Japan giving Saudi Arabia weapons and Saudi Arabia giving oil. In 1946, just after the war ended, Yugoslavia fell into civil war between the government led by Peter II and the partisans led by Josip Broz Tito, with the anti-communists winning with British support. In 1949, Israel is still formed and the Soviet Union would still support the Arab League. Japan meanwhile would support Israel as they were up until the signing of the Tripartite Pact, quite Zionist. It is even possible that they create a second Jewish homeland somewhere in Manchuria or Shanghai. In 1950, Mongolia invades Mengjiang and starts to see early victories and even managed to take their capital Kalgan. However, Japan joined the war and supported Mengjiang heavily, causing them to start to push Mongolia back and take their capital Ulaanbaatar. When it looked like they are gonna win, the Soviet Union joined the war and pushed the Japanese back to where it all started. In 1953, after 3 years of fighting, the border just changed a little bit. In 1954, the Jebel Ali War, or Oman War, still breaks, and just like Saudi Arabia, Japan supports the Imamate of Oman under Ghalib al-Haini, who managed to win. Oman becomes a theocracy. With both Japanese and British help, the Mutawakkilat Kingdom of Yemen wins its civil war. Cuba still becomes communist, but the Soviet Union don't support them as they don't want to antagonize the so far neutral United States, and thus the Pay of Pigs invasion ends in the overthrow of Fidel Castro and the reinstatement of Fulgencio Batista. The Hungarian Revolution of 1956 might still happen, but here it would be trying to achieve an independent Hungary. It could whether succeed, making Hungary independent again, or it could fail. If it does fail, Hungary probably might get more autonomy. The Algerian War of Independence would be much greater, as France would be even more determined not to give up the colony. In 1974, Social Democrat François Mitterrand managed to defeat Valéry Giscard d'Estaing with 55.13% of the vote, and he would accept defeat and grant Algeria independence. The far-right OAS would continue fighting on, but with the fall of Algiers in 1975 the war officially ended. The Iranian Revolution still happens and the new Islamist government would align itself with Japan, and with Japanese help it manages to take down Iraq and establishes the Islamic Republic of Iraq under Mohammed Bakr al-Hakim. The Soviet Union still invades Afghanistan, and the United Kingdom supports the Mujahideen through Pakistan and Japan through Iran. The Soviets still eventually leave and the Taliban takes over. In 1991 the Soviet Union still collapses and the Baltic countries would be eschewed to secure protection from potential Soviet aggression and Japan, but expand its sphere into Central Asia with Mengjiang annexing Mongolia. Japan itself would collapse in 1995. Korea, Mongolia, China, Vietnam, Cambodia and Laos regained their independence, but Thailand invaded Cambodia and pushed its border to the Mekong. With both the Soviet Union and Japan having collapsed, the United Kingdom became the sole great power. Iran and Saudi Arabia would find each other in a Cold War with London support Riyadh. If 9/11 were to happen, its target would be London, and the war would be solely in Afghanistan. During the Arab Spring Iraq would fall into civil war, but with Iranian help the government retains control. China and Russia would slowly become great powers. In this timeline Japan would become a great power after defeating China with Allied help until 1995. The Cold War would be three-sided and the United States are still isolationist and the United Kingdom effectively replaces them in the international stage. If you liked the episode, leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe. Goodbye.